Is this where I give you the money now? Okay. Good morning, Saratoga. My name's Harold Long. I'm an alcoholic. It's great to be here with you, and it's a privilege to be here with you. I have a sobriety date of April 7th, 1987. My home group in St. Louis, Missouri is AA on the Rocks. If you ever come to St. Louis, I hope you come to AA on the Rocks on a Wednesday. A strong three-legacy group. And it's co-ed, it's speaker. A lot of people that are here have been to On the Rocks to not only visit, but to serve as well, because when we get a hold of you quick enough, we're going to put you to work. We're going to get some mileage out of you, right? Promise you. There's a big party there in 2030. Anybody coming? Yeah. Is anybody coming? Come on. 2030? If you can come early, if you can come in on Wednesday, I would encourage you to come on Wednesday. Because we'll have the pre-party, the St. Louis community will. I don't know what all that looks like. I can just tell you it's going down, and you'll want to be there for that. It's a lot of fun. So, mark it on your calendar and, come to St. Louis. I come from a great line of sponsorship. It's made a huge difference in how my life's turned out. There's three types of people in AA from my experience. There's those who make it happen. There's those who watch it happen. And then there's those who don't know what's happening at all, right? And I've been all three of those people, and we'll talk about that today. But I'm glad that I finally made it to the people that are just all the way in on this thing, and it changed my life. And a lot of them are here. You're going to hear from some of them that you haven't heard from. Many of them you've already heard from, and they're all beautiful. Nancy was humble and great, and just brings us back to that childhood approach to recovery. Just keep it simple, and just have fun. You know, how much more powerful of a message than that. And Billy and I have been road dogs for a long time, running this deal. And so we have a lot of history together and all kinds of things. So it's always a privilege to be with him. And Mary Beth, there's 1 second left on the clock, and you threw it from downtown and swish, baby. You hit a swish. You did great. And if you ever get a chance to go to Mary Beth's and stay with her and Jimmy, she makes the best biscuits and gravy on the planet. It's incredible. It's just, nobody cooks better than Mary Beth. That's for sure. And happy birthday to Jimmy, who will take a shot at me when he gets to talk here in a little bit. I can promise you that. So I'll let him have his fun. But they've asked me to speak on steps 4 and 5. And when you read those, you see them on the bulletin there, the poster board, the blind, if you would. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. That sounds more like an audit than a step, right? It sounds like you need a therapist and probably an attorney, in the room when you're going to do that. That's the way I looked at it. And then we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs, which sounded more like a confession. And I'm going to plead guilty, and I'm going to take the fifth, whatever you want to say. And here we are. And so I wasn't excited about any of those things when I got here. I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous in the DOC back in 1979. That's where some fine members brought AA into a facility I was in. And it was an adequate demonstration of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't stay sober, didn't want to be sober, but it was an important time because new people, especially, we listen with our eyes and we think with our feelings. And, and I couldn't hear with these, but I definitely listened with these that day. And so I was intoxicated soon after. Part of the plea bargain I took was to go to treatment for the first time. I went to treatment for 30 days and was ripping and running and intoxicated within minutes after leaving that treatment center. And it would continue on for another 7 years in my life and burn my life to the ground again and find myself in a cage one more time in a whole lot of trouble and on my way back to the penitentiary one more time. And it was in that cell that I did what you heard every speaker here tonight do. I just finally got to that place of surrender. Nobody can do that for me. It's a very personal thing. Most people will never experience it. That's the hard part of this. It's that 90% of the people who suffer from alcoholism will never be where we're at. They'll never be in a 12-step meeting. They'll never go to a treatment center. That's 90%. We're 10% of the people that get here. And out of us, it's just not super great odds because we got to surrender. And not only surrender and concede to our innermost selves that we're powerless over alcohol, but we have to come to the end of ourselves, which Mary Beth was telling us about. You have to come to the end of yourself if you're going to stay here. And doing that is a process. Some people do it the minute they get here. I mean, they're fully surrendered the minute they walk in Alcoholics Anonymous. They lay it all down. I'm done. I'm done with this life. I'm done being who I was, and I'm going to give it away. I'm just done. Do with it. I'll do whatever. Tell me to get in the car, whatever, I'll do it. And they do it. They come all the way in, sit all the way down, and stay from day one. And they just go on to live this amazing storybook life from the minute they get here. There's people like that in this room. And there's others like me who didn't want to be here, had no other options, had to come here. But even after I was here, Katie barred the door. I just resisted. And I fought this thing. And it's a wonder that I even stayed sober in full transparency. It's a wonder I even stayed here. But I did, and I'm grateful that I did. I stayed till I was finally able to come to the end of myself. But my first outside AA meeting in 1987, the guy who brought me to the meeting, I walked in, and I didn't want to be there for sure. And I sat at the edge of next to a guy, and I asked him this question. If you're new here this weekend, you might have this very question. Here was my question. It's a fair one. How long do we got to come here? How long does this last? Because everything was about time for me. Is it 6 months? Is it 60 days? What is this? And the guy was kind of perplexed by my question, but he said to me, the answer is pretty prophetic. He says, you have to come until you want to. And that wasn't good news because I didn't even want to be there that night, right? Much less the next night. And I dang sure didn't want to be there when I looked like that guy. But 39 years later, I look like that guy, right? But you have to stay until you want to. And in order to stay until you want to, you have to come to the end of yourself. And it's hard to do that because we're just so broken, we're so fractured when we get here. And so I did. I came back to St. Louis from northern Missouri where I was at in treatment. I had a huge court trial that I had to go to. That's all I cared about. That's it. I was obsessed with it. I didn't go to AA. And this guy who was the Ebby in my life was only 2.5 months sober. He wasn't trying to work the steps with me or be my sponsor, but he was trying to bring me into this fellowship, to live this life, to come into the center of recovery, to start to live in recovery and visit the world, not try to live in the world and visit recovery. He was really trying to help me make that transition in my life. And I struggled with it. And he'd call me, hey man, did you go to AA? No. Why? I don't know why. I really didn't know why. I was like, I just haven't been. You need to go. Yeah, and then he would say things like, your life depends on it. And I knew that was a true statement, but I can tell you to my core I didn't want that to be a true statement. It's the last thing I wanted to be true. But finally I was able to go to my first AA meeting in St. Louis. And I'd been home I'd been home for a while. This is late June. I've probably been home almost 60, going on 90 days before I went to my first meeting when I got there. And I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was everything I could do to raise my hand saying, my name's Harold, I'm an alcoholic. That felt more like a confession than anything. Raise my hand saying, I'm an alcoholic. It's like, there, you glad I said it? You happy now? Just go on, pass, leave me alone. I didn't want to be there. I had no idea what recovery stood for. The word recovery means to be restored to health. I didn't even know how broken that I truly was. But I stayed, and I got into the fellowship piece of this thing. I decided, I fell in love with you people. How can you not fall in love with your people here if you stay long enough? I mean, that was an easy thing to do. I was a rock and roll drummer my whole life, so I had a sober band, and I had a great sober band. We had a heck of a lot of fun playing music. I went to the sober dances. I chased the sober girls. I did all that stuff. And I had a pretty good run. You would have thought I was running for a political post, if you would, a position, because I was busy. I was everywhere you see. But the problem was I was on step none. I was on nada. I remember being at the International when we had it in Atlanta some years back, and the person who spoke on Friday night said, I did everything right in AA, but 12 things. I did everything right but 12 things. And that was really my life for the first 3 years I was here. So if you're new here and you're like, I can identify with that. I just don't want to come all the way into this thing. And the question is why? And it's a fair question. I think the best answer I ever heard to this date come from Clancy. And it was simply this, that the hardest thing any of us will ever do in Alcoholics Anonymous is to take actions we don't believe in. We don't believe it'll change our life. If you're struggling to do an inventory, or do a fifth step or any part of the work, 8, 9, whatever, it's because you just don't believe it's going to make a difference in how your life turns out. Because you're too full of the world system. Too much individualism and consumerism and materialism, secularism. That's what drove my life. Call me crazy. I think I could be a little bit more spiritual if I had a few $100s in my pocket and a legal driver's license, right? And a car that wasn't held together by bumper stickers, right? This is my mindset. If I didn't live in the basement of the house, had a better looking girl or a girl at all in my life, if I had these things, I think I could be a little bit more happy, joyous, and free. Let's be real. In this idea of a spiritual formula, putting the spiritual ahead of the material to change our life was just not something that resonated with me, and I just didn't believe it would work. And what does that even mean anyway? If someone would ask you that question, what does it mean to believe in something? What does that look? How would you define it? If someone asked you that question, what does it mean to believe in something? And I would argue back all these years later that it means you'd be willing to die for it. And when I look at my relationship with King Alcohol, I was definitely willing to die for it. I put my life on the line for it every chance that I got, just to get the relief, to get the effect produced by it one more time. I believed in enough in it. I was willing to sacrifice your well-being and mine to get that relief. That's how much I believed in it. So when you get to recovery, it's like, why do we struggle to do this stuff? Because we don't believe it. It's going to make a difference in how my life turns out. If I really believed it, you couldn't keep me from doing it. I couldn't do it fast enough. But I didn't understand it. I didn't relate to it. I didn't experience it. So therefore, I wasn't willing to do it. I was still looking for a worldly solution to a spiritual problem, and I think everybody can relate to that. I mean, and it's still today, all these years later, what do we still do? We all still do that. We all still reach back for worldly stuff, just for relief. It might not be a substance, but it's a behavior in our life. It's one that we just can't let go of. Jimmy's going to talk a lot about that in a little while. It's just I keep wanting to go back to that. And we're just human beings. We're fatally flawed. And so that belief, so this whole thing of alcoholism, even really in 3 phases, if you would. Phase 1, it's fun. Then phase 2, it's fun with problems. Then phase 3 is nothing but problems. And those phases last different periods for different people. If it was still fun, if I was still in phase 1, I would not be in Saratoga, I promise you. And if you even think about the name Saratoga, that has to be an alcoholic experience. What are we going to call this town? Well, I was with Sarah. We were at a toga party, Saratoga. That's what we'll call it, right? That's probably got roots like that. But that's how we get here. But so you get here and you stay. And so finally I asked this guy to sponsor me. His name was Roy. Roy just passed away last year. He was almost 50 years sober. He was instrumental in my life. He was my first real sponsor in AA. And I had the privilege to lead his funeral, to officiate his funeral. What a humbling experience that was all these years later, to stand up there and with his family and just a room full of AA members to have that privilege. But I finally went to Roy's house. And the reason I chose Roy is, 1, he knew me my whole sobriety. But 2, I could walk to his house. I could literally walk down to his house. And so I walked to his house and I asked for a meeting. And I walked into his house and I sat down. And he says, what's up? And I said, I really need to get a sponsor. And you know me my whole sobriety, so would you be willing to do that? And he agreed to that. He said, well, you've been around about 3 years. Tell me about your life. And I'll tell you about my life. I said, I'm 25, going on 26. I don't have an education. I don't have a GED. I got a criminal record. I don't have a license. And I probably never will the rest of my life. I live in the basement of an old beat-up house up the road. I have a dead-end job. I got a piece of crap car held together by bumper stickers, but I can't legally drive, but I do anyway. I said, you can just take my life, Roy, and just capitalize it. All big letters. Sucks. That's where my life's at, Roy. Make a neon sign out of it. And this is what I vomit all over Roy's table. But what he said to me changed my life. And it's true what he told me that night as it is on March 28, 2026, standing here. He said, Harold, I hear everything that you're sharing tonight. And I'll be the first one to admit you've been dealt a pretty tough hand in your life. I'll be the first one to admit it. But I hope you're going to hear what I'm going to tell you. Because everything you have in your life sitting right here, right now on my kitchen table, every single thing you have in your life, you've attracted to you by the person that you've become. And the day you're man enough to own that is the day you're on your way to some real change. But until you can own that truth right there, you're eventually going to drink again because you're not happy about your sobriety. I know you don't think so sitting here because you haven't drank in 3 years, but you're like a candle blowing in the wind. Eventually it's going to blow out. You're like the boy whistling in the dark. You would give anything to be able to drink and get away with it. Or you're going to do what your dad did. My dad was an alcoholic. who never got recovery, never got sober. At age 54, he took his life. That's how my dad quit drinking. So you're going to do one or two things, man. You're either going to grow or you're going to go. And the million-dollar question is, what do you want to do? And then we stand at that turning point. All of us do. And this is, and there's not just one. There's many throughout our sobriety, and there's many more to go. But I stood there at this turning point, and I knew he was going to say, let's work the steps. I wasn't excited about it, but I was out of ideas. I was out of options. And I finally became willing to take actions that I didn't believe in. And it changed my whole life. And I never stopped from that moment till now. And it tasted so good, I never stopped from that day till now. But it really just uncovered a lot of deception, twisted perceptions, delusions going down the line in my life. Why my life was the way it was. There's a story about a woman who got off work on a Friday night. She got off work on Friday and she decided it was a stressful week. I'm just going to go to the mall. This is back when you'd really go to the mall. What Amazon wasn't existing at this point. I'm going to go to the mall. I'm going to go walk in there, get one of them fancy coffees from one of those places. I'm going to get one of those Mrs. Fields chocolate chip cookies, that smell marketing that you can't pass up. I'm going to get the paper, and I'm just going to chill out Friday night. So she gets the coffee, and she gets the bag of cookies. She gets her paper, and she goes over to this common area where people sit, and it's crowded. It's Friday night. There's no place to sit. Only one person sitting across from her that had an empty spot. She says, you mind if I sit here? He says, no, that'd be fine. Sit down. And she sits down across from him, and she opens up her paper. She puts her bag of cookies down. She puts her coffee down. She opens up her papers. And she starts reading her paper. And just right off the bat, she hears. And she puts the paper down, and this guy's eating one of her cookies. And she couldn't believe it. She don't even know this guy. So she grabs a cookie, stares right at him, gives him the death stare. And this goes back and forth until there's one cookie left. And she goes to reach for it, and he grabs it before she could. And he snaps it in half, and he gives her half of it. And she was out of her mind. Talk about resentment. She's out of her mind. She just grabs what left of her coffee, grabs her paper. She's disgusted, walks out to the car, finds her car, beep, 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 finds her car, throws her purse in there, opens the door, throws her purse in there, gets in the car, goes to shove her paper in the purse, and it won't go in there. And she's like, what's the deal? And she reaches down, pulls the paper out, and she looks, and there's her bag of cookies. Right? He wasn't eating her cookies. She was eating his cookies, right? And that's the story of my life. But convinced, totally convinced that I was right and you were wrong, right? That is the story that gets us here in our life. And so we get to step 4, and it brings us to this work. And I remember sitting with Roy, and he handed me a yellow notebook pad, and I didn't even know what to write. And I said, what do I do? And he says, just write on the top of the page in big bold letters, liar, cheat, and thief. If you get lost, just refer to the top of the page. And he was being sarcastic in a way. But I wrote it down. I started writing, and I didn't even know what the word resentment was. I'm from the Ozark Mountains, right? So Tommy loves that. He loves the fact that I'm from the Ozark Mountains. He likes to try to impersonate me. It's pretty pathetic, but if you want entertainment, he'll do it for you this weekend. Right? It's $5, I think, an impersonation or something. And most of you know, well, I know about Ozark. I saw that on TV. I saw it on Netflix, right? And but it's kind of like that a little bit, I guess. But that I didn't know the word resentment. It wasn't any part of our vocabulary. So I'm like, well, I guess I don't even have any if I don't know what they even are. And this is as true as it can be. And I said, what is it? When you say resentments, what are you talking about? And he says, well, let's just change the word for you. Let's take the word resentment away from it. Let's change it to conflict. Have you ever had any conflict? I said, man, I've been in conflict my whole life. He said, that's it. That's your word. Just start writing down the conflicts that you've struggled with. Well, that was easy for me. I've been in conflict my entire life. And how do you do it? The only thing that counts, and if you're new here, I really hope you hang on to this, because our literature, you'll hear me reference for literature. I'll paraphrase it. I may misquote it. If it's not right, see Tommy. He's my host, so you can see Tommy. And but that's the deal. The only thing that counts is thoroughness and honesty. any inventory you do, whether it's should I take this job, should I go to this school, should I stay in this relationship, should I do this, should I do that, and you do it. I mean, the only thing that's going to make that an effective inventory, was it thorough and was it honest? To the best of my ability. And so I started writing this stuff. And I started writing these things out, and right away he grabbed my paper and he looked at it and he asked me a question. He goes, "Where's your dad on this paper?" I said, "What?" He goes, "Where's your dad?" So this is that twisted perception that I'm talking about. This is the magic of the inventory. There's a lot of magic between this space and this space, between your head and this paper. There's magic here. And so I said, well, I mean, I never had anything to do with the guy. We never, he left. My mom ran him off when I was 2 or 3. I saw him a few times when I was a squirt. The last time I saw my dad when I was 14, and he came, the first time I got sentenced, he came to Hillsboro, Missouri, to the courthouse and watched me get sentenced. That's the last time I saw my dad. So I never really had a relationship with him. I don't have any conflict with my dad. Oh, you don't have any conflict with your dad? I said, no, I really don't. He goes, let me ask you this question. When you were growing up and running around with other guys who did have dads, was you ever envious of that? I said, yeah, I was big time envious of that, if I'm honest. And if they ask you about your dad, you specifically, if they ask you about your dad, what would you tell them? And I had to think about it, but if I was thorough and I was transparent, well, I would make up things about my dad. I would say he's in the rodeo, or he's a trucker, or he's in the military. I would never just say he wasn't absent. He was MIA. I would never say that. And so all of a sudden, after doing this work, to start out, he doesn't even belong on my inventory. By the time I got done, there was a great big hole in the shape of a dad sitting right in front of me. This is the power of the inventory, is to really see what's really at the heart, I guess, of the malady, what Billy beautifully talked about last night, what Bill Wilson would talk about. He would draw circles on it. 3 circles: obsession, physical allergy, spiritual malady. The spiritual malady is the real problem, then what? It's the solution, spiritual solution. What's the solution? Well, first, concede that I'm spiritually blocked off. If you're a person of faith, I would call it spiritual separation. If you're a person of reason, just call it separation. But whatever makes the world go around, what turns the sun orange and all that good stuff, I ain't connected to it. Can you just be that truthful? And so this is what was at the root of my life, this separation. This is what causes all the irritable, restless, discontent in my life. Long before I ever drank. I call it the great disconnect. Because that's what it is. It's not just disconnect. It's the great disconnect. Because it leads to all that stuff that you heard every speaker here talk about. And especially Nancy and especially Mary Beth really lifted this up. You almost hear it every time somebody stands at this podium, you hear it. I never felt like I fit in. I always felt like I was a square peg fitting in a round hole. I felt like everybody else had the answers to the quiz but me. I felt like everybody else had their or in a play, they had their lines, I didn't have mine. Or as the old country term, I felt like I was a day late and $1 short. But I felt disconnected. I could have never articulated it. If you would have asked me how I'm doing with it, I would have said, I'm kind, I'm cool. Whatever. I just nudge you, whatever. Move on down the line. I didn't know how to even deal with that. But that drove my life. I can promise you it drove my life. And guess what? It can still drive my life today. Because what you thought of me absolutely paralyzed me. You own the title to my soul. And social media put all that on steroids to the power of 100,000. There's lots of people today, especially younger people, teens and younger adults, that will inflict bodily harm on themselves, self-harm, because they didn't get enough views, they didn't get enough likes, they didn't get enough emojis. So desperately needing validation. And that's what the spiritual malady wants more than anything. It doesn't just need affirmed, it demands it. And it's an impossible ask. You get to decide what you want to be when you grow up. What did I want to be when I grew up? I wanted to be Peter Criss from Kiss. I wanted to ride a chopper. I wanted to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I want to have a girlfriend like all the girls in Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. That's what I wanted. That's what drove my life. That's it. There was no higher power in my life. There wasn't anything else driving my life. It was world stuff, materialism, and all that stuff. And it drove my life, and guess what? It still can today, if I'm honest. If I'm not spiritually centered, what you think of me can really start to impact me still today. That's how powerful it is. It's not just one and done, past, it's over with. It can show up and knock on my door tomorrow, and it can really affect my life. I can promise you, and this is where the inventory becomes so powerful, that every scar I got on my body, every piercing I got on my body, every tattoo I have on my body, I can promise you came from that. I did it to win approval, to try to gain approval, to get acceptance, to get affirmed. Not only did I need it, but I demanded it. It drove my life. And the pain of living that way, that pounding, if you would, right between your soul, was nonstop until King Alcohol came to my life. And then I discovered relief. The brain said, remember that. We're going to go there often. Pretty much turned my will and life over to that relief from that day forward. And I had a solution, so I thought. And I gave my life to it to deal with that disconnect. But I'm starting to see this disconnect in front of me, the power of resentment in our life. And you know how resentment works. It's like holding court. Whoever you're resenting, they're on trial. And you're the judge, you're the prosecutor, you're the jury, and you're definitely the executioner. And when the judge asks, how do you plead? Oh, they're guilty, Your Honor. They're guilty. We're going for the death penalty on this one, too. If you go for the death penalty on every one of them, I know, but we're going with, but he definitely deserves it. And it's so hard because you don't even see how much control it has in your life. I didn't see it. My sponsor gave me a great hillbilly illustration, if you would, Tommy. He said, let me show you the power of resentment. He said, Harold, if we took a 4x8 sheet of plyboard and went out in that nice green lawn there and we laid it down on the grass, and we just left it there for a couple of weeks and then went back and flipped it over, what would it look like a couple of weeks later? I said, well, it'd be dingy looking, moldy looking, probably a lot of bugs and all kinds of stuff. But if we laid it back down and we left it there for another month, what would it look like when we went back and got it? I said, well, it'd be bare earth. It'd be dead. He said, so those resentments, they're just like little 4x8 sheets of plyboard all over your soul. And they've been there. They've blocked the sunlight of the Spirit from you your entire life. And the soul I would define as our mind, our will, and our emotions. So ultimately, you're pretty spiritually sick. And that is the malady. That is the root of the problem. The drinking's the solution that I seek for relief, but it's not the problem. This is the problem. This great disconnect, this malady. And it drove my life. It owned the title to my soul. I didn't even know that. This is revolutionary stuff for me. But I show you the power of resentment. I have a guy that I work with right out of treatment. I spent a lot of time in treatment centers, a lot of time in the Department of Corrections, have for 35 plus years. That's where I spend most of my AA life. So I work with a lot of different people that are pretty broken. This particular person got out, had about 3 years of sobriety, but through a series of compromises, a series of resentments, found his way back to the bottle. And in the course of last year, in 2025, he spent four times he was in treatment again. And this has been going on with him since 1990. So this is not new information, for him in his life. But he went on and on. The end of February, at birthday night at my home group, I gave him a 6-month coin. And I was at page 96 with this guy. Because he just continued to do his own thing. He'd come in, he'd be great for 3 or 4 weeks, and then he would disconnect, start trying to manage his own life. And then the next thing you know, he's drinking again. And so the last Wednesday of February, I gave him a coin for 6 months. Now, we're just had the last Wednesday of March. He got to work. He was resentful. He was in his mid-60s. They worked him hard, 10, 12 hours a day sometimes. He'd come home, and he was tired, and he was exhausted. And he's like, man, I'm just not going to go to a meeting tonight. I got to rest, man. I'm just wiped out, Harold. I mean, I don't know how you do what it is you do, but I got to rest. And so these series of compromises would build up, and he became resentful. He has a daughter who has terminal ill cancer. She's stage 4, his only daughter. He's resentful at all that. Resentful what's going on in the world, the leaders and all of it. I mean, just not just resentment, I mean pure hate, rage. And just a few weeks ago, he said, man, I almost got into it with a guy at work. And I said, what's the deal? And he says, hey, he made some comment about me always being so needy towards my daughter right now, which you know is a sensitive topic for me already. He goes, and I was this close, man. I was this close to laying it on him. Well, 2 weeks ago, just a week ago, that's exactly what happened. He had another altercation with a guy, and he almost beat him half to death at work with a whole witness of people. Got terminated, got isolated, wouldn't return anybody's call. We knew he was drunk. I knew he was drinking again. So last Monday morning, this is a text I got for this guy. It says, Robert, this guy's younger brother, just called, and this guy I'm talking to was pronounced dead at 8:47 tonight. They found him unconscious behind his door. He was apparently still breathing. He was taken to the hospital. He died of acute alcohol poisoning. So you want to know if resentment's the number one offender? That's a live, fresh example of what that looks like. That's why we can't afford that stuff in our life, you know. Can't afford it to have it. I had a whole slew of it when I got here. But through this inventory process, I was able to, as Chuck would say, uncover, discover, discard this stuff. It's been blocking me, what Mary Beth laid out, this channel. You know, it's blocked off. So I got free from that. But I can easily get stuck back into it through a series of compromises. Life on life's term can be hard. And some of that stuff we experience today still. But it's real. You think about fears. This is the next part that we look at. And fear is just a normal part of life. I could relate to being afraid of certain things, but being under the care, custody, control of fear, I would have never bought that. Matter of fact, I would have told you I wasn't afraid of nothing when I got here. And if you want to fight about it, let's go fight about it. I mean, I'll fight with you. I've been fighting my whole life. You want to go throw down? Let's go throw down. I got scars all over my body to prove that. So I didn't understand this whole concept of fear. What are you afraid of? Nothing. That was my fear inventory, pretty much. But because of this delusional mind that I told you about, because I always have these stories, hillbillies always have stories. And they're twisted, they're stories of twisted perceptions. I mean, we think we know, and we think it's true. It's like three hillbillies, Ozark Mountain hillbillies, sitting around. It's Easter right now, so they're trying to define what Easter's about. These three hillbillies. So the first one says, well, Easter is about that guy in the red suit that comes and he hides eggs all over your yard. And the second one goes, no, man, that's not what it's about. It's about that bunny. And that bunny shows up with wrapped gifts and puts them underneath the tree. And the third one goes, man, you guys are just as dumb as a box of rocks. He goes, Easter's about this guy named Jesus, and he comes thousands of years ago, and he came, and he did all this stuff and all these great teachings, and they nailed him to this tree, and then they took him off the tree, and then they put him in this cave, and they rolled this rock over in front of it, and then they came back 3 days later and rolled it out, and if he comes out and sees his shadow, it means there's 6 more weeks left, right? That's how twisted our stories are. So here I am thinking that I can't relate to this, that I got my stories and they're twisted at best. My stories are twisted at best. And so we started talking and unpacking it. So I went from no fear to a life driven by 100 forms of fear and self-pity, self-delusion. This is what it looks like in real life. When I got sentenced for the first time, and this wasn't to the penitentiary, this is to a boys' home before the penitentiary. So I was taken away from my mom, made a ward of the court, first time I ever away from mom along, being sent to this place called Boys Town. And I'm in the back seat of the car. And I wouldn't have told you I was scared. I would have just said, this is awkward, this is weird, I'm nervous, but I wouldn't, the word afraid would have never come out of my mouth. But I'm back there and I'm with this malady. This 100 forms of fear is talking to me. This is what it sounds like. How many voices? Well, if I went and saw a therapist, they'd charge me a group rate. Let's just put it that way. There's a lot of noise going on. But this is how the conversation went. This is what fear sounds like. Man, you can't go to an all-guys camp with the name Harold. The name Harold sucks. And then it just shuts up and lets you resonate with that, cook with that. It's a true story. And I'm sitting there thinking about, well, who do I know named Harold? And my dad's name was named Harold, but he didn't go by Harold. He went by Jerry. And we don't even know why that was, but he picked Jerry. But I got to thinking, man, who is named Harold? And there's nobody in Rambo named Harold. There's nobody in 50 Shades of Grey named Harold, right? There's nobody in, Roadhouse named Harold. I mean, this is before those movies come out. But the only guy named Harold that any registered was a guy who was on the cartoons on Saturday. On Fat Albert. Remember that show? Hey! And who was the dumbest guy on that show? Oh, Weird Harold. That's right. So I can't use that. I can't go to an all guys camp with the name Harold. My middle name's Eugene. Yeah, get it out of your system. Go ahead and get it out. We'll take a few seconds. That's ass whipping guaranteed with that. And my last name's long, so you take that acronym, it spells hell. But we got off the hour and a half from St. Louis to St. James, Missouri. When we got off the exit, I changed my name to Jeffrey Allen Long. And that's what my name stayed till I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I would have told you I wasn't afraid of anything when I got here. What you thought of me paralyzed me. You absolutely owned the title to my soul. And you still can today, if I'm not careful. And this is what the fear drove my life. Although it says you're driven by, think about that. You're driven. You're not even in the driver's seat. You're just a passenger in the car. You're being driven by this stuff. It's determining where you go, who you see, what you do, where you get out, where you get back in. It runs the ship. This is all revolutionary stuff because I'm just under all these twisted perceptions and delusions. And then you get to this victimization piece. Powerful piece of the inventory. I mean, it's powerful. It had me by the throat. I spoke victimese very well, right? I had a blame list as long as the Mississippi River while my life was jacked up. And I had a lot of co-signers and endorsers to that list. So to conclude, as our book would say, to conclude that others was wrong is about as far as most of us ever get. Yeah, that's it. I passed the buck, right? I passed the buck quick. Whatever out you give me. And ask yourself, have you ever met a happy victim in your life? And really, you can take any conflict you ever have going on, I don't care who it is, if you get to the center of it, I can promise you victimization's at the heart of it. I'm here because of you. And the problem is, if there's any justification to it, because many times there are, I had a lot of justified resentments and justified fears and all this stuff on my inventory. If there's justification and the percentages go in your favor, well, it really has that much more power on you. And you're wanting me to set aside their 80 and look at my 20? Come on. Are you nuts? But that's where we get free. That's how we have to do. We have to get to that space to where we're going to get free from that stuff. And there was an old comedian that I loved back in the day. Some of you are old enough to remember this old comedian. His name was Flip Wilson. You remember him? And Flip had a great line. Remember that line? The devil made me do it, right? So I use that one all the time. The enemy, in religious circles, this is big time. Well, the enemy, the spiritual warfare, the devil, Satan himself, to pass the buck. Well, I'm under attack. I always had stuff like that. And the best definition I ever heard of the devil or the dark side or an enemy or the lower power happened a few years back, and it came out of a movie I was watching. It was a movie about addiction. And this is the quote. And I'll never forget this quote. When I watched it on TV, it hammered me so bad I had to go back and watch it like 5 times in a row. This quote. And this is what it said. That's the way the devil comes. He don't come to you as evil. He don't come to you on fire. He comes as everything you ever wanted. He comes as you. And boom. Boy, ain't that the truth. Yeah, and so this stuff drove my life. So I had to throw away that victim card. It's one of the hardest things to do. Because there's a lot of hard stories right here in this room. Of abuse and physical abuse and sexual abuse and verbal abuse and go on down the line. I mean, there's some hard stories right here in this room. And no wonder we sought relief from all that. You had to have it because it's so painful to deal with. And so, but it's so easy to pass the buck. I don't want to take any ownership for my life. I don't know that if I believed it was really going to set me free, you couldn't keep me from doing it, but I didn't believe it would change my life. So I ignored it. And then you get to the sex inventory. And that's not about trying to shame us. You know, a lot of us had a lot of partners, a lot of stuff. That guy took me to my first meeting, says, hey, man, when we go in the meeting tonight, if they would call on you, let's hope they don't call on you. But if they would, all I want you to do is say your name is Harold and you're an alcoholic. Don't add anything to it. I don't even have a clue what he's talking about. I said, what do you mean? He says, don't add anything to it. When you say you're an alcoholic, we know you probably smoked some of this, huffed some of that, snorted some of that. And you're from the Ozark Mountains, you probably slept with a few farm animals too. We already know that. Now he's laughing, he's trying to be funny, and I don't want to say there's some truth to that, but you know what I'm saying. You definitely got some partners on there that might fall into that category, let's say. But it's not there to shine the spotlight on all these people and judge you because of your sexual appetite or the choices you made. It's there to show you the pattern in your life. How selfishness and self-centeredness has ruled your life. Right? And it still does today. All of us. It's the root of the problem. Self will never be fully eradicated. It will always show up somewhere, somehow. It manifests itself in 1,000 different ways when it does show up, and it's powerful when it does. And so we look at that, we get it all down, and we confess this stuff. You know, as we get ready to take step 5. But it's important to just see that self is the way to that. As one of my sponsors said, you know, really what you wanted was a woman in a box. A woman you could just get out of the box, take her down from the shelf, get her out, do whatever you want to do for as long as you want to do it. But when you're done with it, put it back in the box, put her back in the box, put it back on the shelf, and then go on and live your single life. That's what you want. I said, man, that sounds pretty harsh. But it was true. I mean, when you look at the behavior, it was true. It's just selfishness to the core. And it still can be. Because when you first get together with whoever, it's butterflies and rainbows. You'll stay up till 2 or 3 o'clock texting, sexting, calling, sending cards, sending flowers. You'll drive 2 hours to spend 15 minutes with them. But eventually all that new car smell wears off. Right? And self comes back in. Everything settles back down. Do you want to stay up and talk? No, I'm going to go to bed. It's 8:30, right? And the next thing you know, you start to feel this pull. And then the self-centeredness, well, I don't know if this is for me anymore. Maybe I'm going to do something different. With the delusion that it's going to be different with whoever. And it will be different because the new car smell will be there one more time. And it'll all be great for a little bit until the new car smell wears off. And we go, well, maybe I got a bad picker. You know, maybe you're just self-centered to the extreme, although you usually don't think so. How about that? Maybe that's the problem. But that's what happens. I can remember listening to a couple who went to a motivational guy. I'll leave his name out. It's irrelevant. But they went to this guy as a last result. Been married 17 years, ready to get a divorce, ready to call it quits. And they said, hey, we want to get an appointment. He took the appointment. He sat down with him. What's going on? Been married 17 years. We're just out of ideas. We've been to marriage counseling. We've done all these things. And we figured you were our last hope. We'd come and talk to you to see if there was something you could offer to could do something. He says, will you guys do an exercise for me? They said, yeah. And he put them in a room by themselves. He handed them an ink pen, inventory. This is the inventory. Gave them a 3x5 index card, each of them. He said, I want you to do this for me. I want you to write down 5 things only, that really attracted you to her when you first started seeing her. Write down those 5 things. And he went in and did the same thing with her for him. And he says, bring them back in. And they came back in. He says, let me see your cards. And he told them, I gave you both the same exercise. How many of those 5 things do you think they were still doing? None. What's the root of the problem? Self. It's always been the problem. Will always be the problem. And I'm not saying there's not specialties to certain circumstances, and there's reasons, and that's why we have sponsors. But at the core of it, that's the root of all my problems with relationships. It was my way or the highway. I'm going to do what I want, when I want, how I want, the way I want. If you don't like it, too bad. Pound salt. That's how I live my life. That's how I can still live my life if I'm not careful. I can still run on self-propulsion, just driving wherever I want to go, doing whatever I want to do. It's just the nature of the beast. So we get to this step 5, and we see it there. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. I'm just like, God knows what I've done, man. Can I just go outside on the deck and just talk to God, and then the rest of this we do anonymously somehow? We can just anonymously do this other part. But no, you have to. Why? Because it validates you're real. It validates transparency. It validates that you've been real to yourself when you sit eyeball to eyeball with another human being and you share the exact nature of your wrongs. And I think that's a key word, nature. What is the nature of your wrongs? It all traces back to the malady, the extreme self-centeredness. That's the nature of who I am. Alcoholic, especially when he's using, is a pretty unlovely creature. Why? Because they're intoxicated and they're selfish. Take away the booze, they're still selfish by nature. That's who we are. If you want to know what you're really about, look at your inventory. Without God in my life, this is who I am, friends. If I separated from it tomorrow, this is who I'll be. I don't need a prophet. I don't need a tarot card reader. I don't need a Ouija board. I just look at this inventory. This is who I am at my best, unplugged from you. If I want a future of what I'm like or what it would be like if I decided to walk away from you, there it is. And it would happen very fast. And so sitting down with somebody and sharing ourselves with somebody, it's not easy, but I was able to sit with Roy. And I know from my own experience, because I've listened to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fifth steps, where the secrets lie. And they're always in the sex conduct, or they're crimes you committed you never got caught for, or they're in the parental section. You're not happy about who you were, or what you did, or how you lived, how you neglected. You were a deadbeat dad. You didn't pay child support. You were never out. You were MIA. You were an abuser. Whatever. But those are usually, 99% of the time, that's where the secrets are at. You can pretty much take all of our inventories, wad them up, put them in a paper bag, shake them and pull it out. It's the same inventory. Different town, different zip code, different decade. But the root of it's still the same stuff. And what I'm afraid of. And the delusion is, the very things I plan on taking to the grave with me are the very things that will put me there. It's what's going to put me in the grave. I carry around these stickers like thin pieces of fine glass, where if they just got touched, they would shatter. I'm trying to protect them with everything I got. We're as sick as our secrets, and we hang on to them. And being able to sit down for the first time with a sponsor, a qualified sponsor, who led with his own secrets, changed my life. Absolutely changed my life. I had no idea it was going to do for me what it did, but it did. It changed my life. But here's the catch with that. Because even after you get sober, alcoholics, my sponsor said, look, Harold, there's 3 things alcoholics do well. Let me tell them to you. 3 things. 1, they lie. 2, they lie. And 3, they lie about lying. Right? They do that really, really well. But the alcoholic is the most masterful, skilled fabricator and elaborator on the planet. And they've been doing it their entire lives, and they don't even know they do it. And this is kind of what it looks like. The little kid's riding his bike down by the lake, and he comes up on this guy who's fishing, this old-timer's fishing. And he stops and he says to the old-timer, hey, mister, have you caught any fish today? And the guy looks at him and says, well, if I catch this 1 and 2 more, that'll give me 3 for the day. And the kid goes, wow, that's awesome. We don't realize he just told him he hadn't caught nothing, right? But he can't tell him he hadn't caught nothing. Every itch of his fiber will not do it. It's just got to fabricate it or elaborate it. Make ourselves look sicker than we are, better than we are, but who we are is hard. If you really want to see this dilemma play out, play golf. Can I get a witness, golfers? I mean, you play golf, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You play golf, especially if you're the scorekeeper. Because you watch them. They fluff it, they top it, they give themselves mulligans, they do all kinds of crap. You know they got an 8, at least a triple bogey. You're keeping score. It's like, what'd you get? Just put me down for a 5. And these are guys you love and respect. Years of sobriety. Loser. Right? But it's true. And that temptation to want a 6 versus an 8 is the spiritual malady. And like a 99 is better than a 91 at the end of the day. Who cares? But in that moment, I care a lot. It sounds petty, but it's true. And this is what we'll do. By human default, we do this stuff. And it can get us in trouble, long with years of sobriety. I call it the rule of 80-20, the delusion of 80-20. And after you've been here for a while, this is kind of what it looks like. I'll tell you about, you can say 60, 40, 70, 30, 80, 20, 90, 10. I don't care. Pick your percentages. But I'm going to tell you a certain percentage of my life. Truth. Total transparency. But there's going to be a percentage I'm not. And as my grand sponsor, Bob, would say, well, there's even an agreement. I'll take that further. He said there's an agreement that goes along with that in these rooms. It's like, I'll tell you about my 80. You tell me about your 80. Don't ask me about my 20. And I won't ask you about yours. And that is happening right here, right now. There's 80, 20, 70, 30, 60, 40, 90, 10, 95, 5, whatever. That tendency to want to look a little better than you are, it will destroy you, and you'll know it will destroy you, but yet you'll still do it because of the power of the great disconnect. The ego is a mighty warrior. Pretty much says, look, dude, you can do all the step work in the world you want. Have the greatest sponsor. I ain't changing. Not today, not tomorrow, not the next day. So good luck with that. And we wrestle with that, right? We wrestle with all that stuff. And how it was really pointed out to me was from my favorite AA members. He's dead now. It was in St. Louis, and his name was Lewis. Lewis T. I got a whole book of Lewisisms. I'm going to give you one right here on this very subject. I'm sitting in a meeting one night, and I'm telling him about this crazy thing I got going on with this girl. And he's listened to all of it. And it was a small group. It was on step 10 this particular night. And when it was done talking, laying out, my side of this, because I had him on trial. I laid out my prosecution. This is what he said to me in front of everybody. And he sounded like B.B. King when he talked, so everybody had to listen to this guy, right? So he'd go, well, he'd say, my name is, I'm an alcoholic and my problem's Lewis. That's what he would say. But he said to me, he says, Harold, sounds like you got a problem with the crab sandwich. Do you know what the crab sandwich is, Harold? I'm looking around everybody. I have no idea what he's going. And I said, no, Lewis, I don't. Oh, well, I'm glad you asked, he said. He said, the pride's one piece of bread and the fear's the other. And you know what the problem with the crab sandwich is, Harold? I said, what's that, Lewis? You're the one eating it. And I've had to rub a lot of brown stuff off my chin over the years because of that very truth. So when that book in the first page of step 5 in our big book and the 12 and 12 says that many old timers have paid dearly for skimping on this step. They're not talking about one and done. I did that a long time ago because so much we talk about the steps in past tense, like I worked the steps. No, the steps are a group, as a forward to the 12 and 12 would say, the 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual nature, if practiced as a way of life, expel the compulsion to drink, and they lead to a life that lead to suffer, to a life where you become happy and usefully whole. It's a way of life. It's a design for living. It's not like we get this podium at the Walmart, we do 12 steps, we got a podium. It seems that way initially because of all the grind that we put into it. But I mean, ultimately, this is your design for living. This is how you go out and live a storybook life. This is how you never drink again. This is how you deal with the great dissonance. When the pounding starts, this is how you live your life. So talking about it in past tense is dangerous, I think, for all of us. And so, but you hear that language. I'm guilty of the very same thing. But it's true that we have to have this sharing that goes on in our life. And so transparency, and so we'll hear from others that will share. Mari's going to share on 10 and 11 and talk about continuing to shine the spotlight of truth on your life, right? And we need that. There's guys in this room I sponsor, but there's guys in here that are in my circles that I share nightly review with, have for decades, for a long time. And it's not a dissertation every night, but it's definitely, here's what's going on in my life. Enough that when my sponsor, Steve, gets it, he can look at my life for the week and say, let's talk about Tuesday. Let's talk about this day. So that practice, this is Bill would write in step 4. This is a lifelong practice of inventory taking. There's magic in this. When I get it out of here, it's like a pinball machine bouncing around there. I have to get it out. I have to get emotionally detached from it. But it's why I need a sponsor as much today as ever. I need somebody who's not emotionally or financially involved in my life to help me take these decisions, steps. And to get real and get truthful with what's going on in my life. We all need it. I will always need it. The minute I don't think so, I'm a dead man walking. And the resentments will come and the fear will take over, and I'll try to be something I'm not. My life will depend on it, and I'll be in a dangerous place. I don't want to be there. So I stay as best I can one day at a time. Imperfect at any of this stuff. But very well aware, I just share where that ends up when you don't. And I could sit here and give you 20 stories like that, of that experience. And not all of them ended in alcohol. Some of them ended with a rope. Some of them ended with a pistol. And I already shared with you about my dad. So I'm going to wrap up just a couple stories as we wrap up. And, we're in, but this is soul sickness. This is really what it's about. I'm going to share a story, and then it's an Easter story, but I'm going to turn it into a big book story. But I want to share the story because it's relevant. We're in a time of spirituality, spiritual reflection in our culture for a lot of different people. But there's a story of a great leader, a great teacher, who had some sponsees with him, if you would. And they were going to go walk, and they come up on a guy who was pretty broken. Matter of fact, he'd been laying there broken for years, estimated probably 38 years. He says, let's go ask this guy. Let's go talk to this guy. And you can almost see the dramatization happen. Shalom. I got a question for you. Yeah, I don't have many answers, but I'll give you what I got. Here's the question. Do you want to be healed? Do you want to be healed? Who are you? It doesn't matter who I am. We'll get to that later. The question remains. Do you want to be healed? I've been coming here for a long time. I'm trying to get in that water, and every time that water bubbles up, people get ahead of me. That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you, do you want to be healed? You don't understand how much pain. I know you've been suffering for a long time, and you don't want any more false hope. But that's not going to solve your problem. Them in your way, those in your way. I'm not interested in it. Will you take me to the water? No, I will not take you to the water. I'm asking you the question, do you want to be healed? And all the stuff we see in our inventory, the victimization, the delusion, the twisted perceptions, the blame list, the excuse list, all the stuff, you can just hear it pouring out of his mouth. I'm here because I'm everybody but me. I'm asking you one more time, do you want to be healed? And finally the guy just crushed. He says, yes. He says, then get up. Get up. And the guy finally gets up. He couldn't believe it, that his life was being transformed, right? He couldn't believe it. And he gets up. And one of the guys says, don't forget your mat. He says, why is that important? Because you ain't coming back here anymore. You've been transformed. Now let's bring it forward to here. You sat with the Abby in your room or your meeting, your first meeting, or your treatment center, or your cell, and they look at you in the eyes, and they say, are you willing to go to any length to have victory over alcohol? Well, you don't understand. This is my 20th time, and that's not what I'm asking you. I'm not asking you how many times you've been to jail. I'm not asking you how many times you've been to treatment. I don't care how long, how many relapse. I'm not asking you about any of that. I'm asking you, are you willing to go to any lengths to have victory over alcohol? And if you can get through all that nonsense, yes, then get up. And let's go. And we're going to walk shoulder to shoulder with you and help you rediscover life. And this is part of that discovery process. The truth. What is the truth? Jack Nicholson said, you can't handle the truth. Well, he's right. I avoided it like the plague most of my life. But it's what changes our life. It's taking the spotlight of truth and shining in our life. Scared to death to do it. What are we going to find? What are they going to discover? What are they going to know? But it's what sets us free. To walk free through that arch that Mary Beth laid out for us. A free person, a free woman, a free human being. I'm free at last. And then my job is, here's the rope. Our brother Don will talk about this on Sunday. Here's the rope. Go back to the hole where you just got out of and throw the hole down and bring somebody else with you. All this is setting us up to do that for the rest of our lives. It's the magic. It's the dope of this thing. I'll close with this story. One of the guys that I work with a lot of guys coming out of prison. This guy just got out after doing decades in prison. And we were going to go to a gravesite to do his amends. He wrote out his letter. One of his victims was in that graveyard, along with his mother, along with his grandma. But when he got out after about 6 months, the H&I team on the western side of Missouri said, "Hey, can you come and do a panel with us? And can you bring one of your guys?" I said, "Yeah, I got one. I just got out. He's got 6 months. He's perfect. I'll bring him with me." So we went over and did the H&I. And on the way back, we stopped at the graveyard where he could go do what he needed to do as for his amends. He was there for a couple hours. Very transforming. I talk about it all day. But afterwards, we were in 25 miles from where my Uncle Bob lived. Some of you know my Uncle Bob's story. He's my dad's brother. This all comes from this inventory. Because Uncle Bob was on my inventory. I hadn't seen him in decades in my life. Why isn't he on your inventory? I've never done nothing to the guy. I only saw the guy when I was 5 or 6, 7 years old. Well, you need to put him on your inventory. And eventually I made it to my 8th step, which Scott's going to talk about here in a little while, 8 and 9. But I put it off because I didn't really feel like I owed the guy anything, right? But eventually, after 5 years, 10 years, 12 years sobriety, finally I got that 8th step card. I'm down to just a stack. I go and make amends to this guy. I look him out, if he's still alive. I go find him. I go to his house in Buffalo, Missouri. And when I got there, I was a nervous wreck. He knew why I was coming. And I got out, and my Aunt Betty come out. I hadn't seen her since I was a little boy. And she says, "He looks like a long." And I walked up, and my Uncle Bob came out, and he put his hand on top of my hand, and he put his other hand on top of my hand, and he looked at me, he says, "Welcome home, son. Come inside. I got some people I want you to meet." And every one of his grandkids, kids, cousins, probably over 30 people in that house to welcome me back into their life. Pretty powerful experience. Well, that experience had happened years before. We're 25 miles from that guy's house. And he's a preacher. He's a Baptist preacher. So I called him and I said, "Hey, we're coming to town. Hey, what about us coming out and going to church with you out in this little country place?" He goes, "Oh, it'd be great. Come out. It's our anniversary here. We're having throwdown chicken and good old country spread." I said, "We're in." That sold us right there, And so we went. Probably maybe 25 people in this little church, me and this guy sitting there. We just come back from this corrections thing, just came back from this big amends thing. Had this whole story of my Uncle Bob. It's Holy Week. This time it's April that year. And he gets down he gets down and sits down on the altar, country guy. And he starts telling this story about washing feet. And he took off his boots. He took off his socks. He rolled up his pant legs, poured water in a basin. He said, "I know one of you. I know somebody here is being called to come up and wash my feet. And if you ain't never been hit by the Spirit of God, you about knocked the breath out of me." And I knew who that guy was. And I went up and washed my Uncle Bob's feet. When I turned around and saw my guy, he was just sobbing. All that experience, friends, came from this little exercise. I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to tell you about it. And I did, and it changed my life. And here's what's good news, and it's not just good news, it's the best news ever. It's what will change your life too. So thank you for this opportunity to be here, and thank you for my life, and that's all I got.